Have you ever felt an inexplicable pull toward someone? Not because they spoke to you, or even looked your way, but simply because they were there. Or maybe you've noticed how a single conversation, perhaps one you barely remember, ended up steering your life in a completely different direction. We tend to think our choices, our paths, our identities are the products of clear, conscious decisions. But beneath that visible layer, there's something else, an invisible thread. These threads are not made of silk or steel, but of energy, subtle cues, unspoken emotions, and tiny patterns of interaction. They form and stretch between people, events, and moments in ways you can't always see, but you can feel, and sometimes these threads pull you toward growth, love, and meaning. Other times, they hold you in loops of fear, doubt, or pain. In today's journey, we'll explore these invisible threads, how they're formed, how they shape your decisions without you noticing, and most importantly, how to become aware of them so you can choose which ones to keep and which ones to let go. Because once you learn to see these threads, you can start weaving the life you actually want. Let's begin. The story of invisible threads often begins long before you're even aware they exist. In childhood, our nervous system is like soft clay, easily shaped by the warmth, the tone, and the presence of the people around us. Every smile, every frown, every moment of silence from those we depend on leaves a subtle imprint. Think about it. When you were small, the way a parent responded to your tears wasn't just about that single moment. It taught your body how safe it was to express pain, or whether it was safer to hide it. A teacher's encouragement might have planted a quiet seed of confidence, a seed you carried for decades. And the opposite is true too. A careless word from a classmate, an absence from someone you loved. These moments with threads of caution, insecurity, or self-doubt that can still tug on you years later. We tend to underestimate the power of these early experiences because they don't come with flashing signs that say, this will matter for the rest of your life. But the truth is, our minds and bodies store these patterns like an unspoken code, and as we grow, those codes play out again and again in who we trust, in the risks we take, in the love we accept or reject. By the time we're adults, we've been carrying a whole tapestry of threads, many of which were woven without our consent or awareness. The real challenge and opportunity is this. Once you start noticing these threads, you can trace them back to their origins. And when you do, you gain the power to reweave the pattern. Because sometimes, to create the life you want, you don't need to start from scratch. You just need to untangle what's already there. These invisible threads don't just live in memory, they guide your steps in ways you rarely notice. Imagine you're offered a new job in a city far away. On the surface, you weigh the salary, the location, the role. But beneath those rational thoughts, a quiet thread might be pulling. Maybe it's the memory of your parents struggling with money, so you lean toward safety, even if the role doesn't excite you. Or perhaps it's the echo of a childhood, where you were always the responsible one, so you choose the option that pleases others, even if it costs you your own happiness. These patterns don't scream, they whisper. And because they whisper in the language you've heard your whole life, they feel like truth. The same thread might decide how you respond in relationships. You might keep people at arm's length, not because they've done anything wrong, but because somewhere in your past, closeness meant pain. Or you might overgive, overcompromise, because deep down, love has always felt like something you had to earn. The danger of these threads is that they operate silently, like invisible autopilot. They can make you believe you're making free choices, when really, you're following an old script. And here's the twist. Even positive patterns can hold you back if they're unconscious. A thread of ambition might push you to succeed, but if it's tangled with the fear of being not enough, success will never feel like enough either. The first step to change isn't cutting all the threads. It's learning to see them, because once you see the strings, you can decide whether to let them pull you or whether it's time to pull back. Seeing these invisible threads for the first time can feel unsettling. It's like turning on the lights in a room you've been sitting in for years. Suddenly you notice the shapes, the shadows, the walls you didn't know were there. The key to recognizing them is slowing down enough to notice patterns. Ask yourself, when faced with change, what is my first emotional reaction? Do I often find myself making the same kind of choices, even when the circumstances are different? What situations trigger an outsized emotional response in me? Those reactions are not random. They are the fingerprints of your threads. Take an example. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone challenges your idea. You feel a wave of defensiveness, not just irritation, but a sudden tightness in your chest that might be more than just disagreement. Maybe it's tied to a thread from years ago, a teacher who dismissed you, a parent who never let you speak without cutting you off, or picture yourself walking away from a promising opportunity because it feels too risky underneath. The thread might be a childhood marked by instability, making safety your first instinct in every decision. Once you start connecting these dots, you'll see the web more clearly. You'll realize that the present moment is often crowded with the ghosts of the past. Here's the challenge. When we first see our threads, we often feel shame, as if we've been weak or foolish for letting them guide us. But that's not the truth. These threads were woven for survival. At one time, they protected you. They gave you stability, identity, even purpose. The problem is, you outgrew them, but they didn't know how to let go. Awareness isn't about judging the thread. It's about holding it in your hand and asking, do I still need you, or are you holding me back now? Because only with awareness can you begin the slow, deliberate act of untangling. Untangling is not about cutting every thread you find. If you rip them out, you risk tearing the fabric of who you are. Instead, think of it as loosening knots, slowly, gently, so the thread can either be rewoven into something new or quietly set aside. Step 1. Start with one thread, not the whole web. You don't need to fix everything at once. Choose the one that shows up most often in your daily life. Maybe it's the voice that tells you don't try, you'll fail, or the reflex to avoid conflict at any cost. Step 2. Change the context. Before you change the habit, if your thread is tied to fear of speaking up, try starting in safer, smaller spaces. Voice your opinion in a friendly group, a low-stakes meeting, or even in your own journal. Build micro moments of courage. Step 3. Replace before you release. Threads exist because they serve a purpose. If you remove one, you need to offer yourself something to take its place. If you untangle the thread of self-doubt, replace it with the thread of curiosity, asking what can I learn here, instead of what if I fail. This is not quick work. Sometimes the knot you're trying to loosen has been tightened for decades. There will be days you feel like nothing is changing, and then one morning you notice your first instinct is different. That is how change quietly announces itself, not with fireworks, but with small, undeniable shifts in how you move through the world. And here's the most important part. You don't have to do this alone. We are social creatures. Just as threads can be woven by relationships, they can also be rewoven by them. Friends, mentors, therapists, even strangers can help you see angles you've missed, offer you new threads to weave into your identity. Untangling is an act of love, not punishment. Love for the person you were who survived with the tools they had. Love for the person you are becoming who now has the freedom to choose new tools. And when you work with care, something beautiful happens. You don't lose yourself in the process. You uncover the version of you that was always there, waiting to breathe without the pull of old strings. Weaving a life you truly want doesn't happen in a rush. It is not a weekend project or something you complete like a checklist. It is an ongoing conversation between who you've been, who you are, and who you are becoming. And that conversation will change over time. Some threads you weave in today will one day feel too tight, and you'll need to loosen them. Others, once unwanted, might become anchors you choose to keep. The key is awareness, noticing when a thread starts pulling you in a direction you no longer want to go. Asking yourself, did I choose this, or is it choosing me? That single question has the power to redirect an entire path. Remember, a healthy weave is not perfectly symmetrical. It's alive, textured, full of imperfections that make it uniquely yours. You're not aiming for a flawless pattern. You're aiming for a fabric that feels honest when you wrap it around yourself. And choice, real choice, is your loom. Every time you pause before acting out of habit, you're picking up the shuttle and deciding what thread passes through next. Some days you will forget. You will weave unconsciously, falling back into old rhythms. That's okay. The beauty of weaving is that you can always pick up the loom again tomorrow. The old threads are part of you. They're not the enemy. They're the history in your tapestry. Proof you've lived, endured, and grown. What matters is that you're no longer tangled in them. You have space now, space to design, to choose, to create. And in that space, you can weave a life that feels both safe and wild, familiar and new. So here's my invitation to you. Begin noticing the threads. Begin choosing the colors, the textures, the direction of your weave. And above all, remember, the loom is in your hands. Thank you for sharing this time with me, for allowing these ideas to sit beside your own thoughts. If you found value in this journey, I'd love for you to join me for the next one. Subscribe, share this with someone who might need it, and keep weaving one intentional thread at a time.